And go.
Hi, it's Gordon in the shop with you for another edition of the Unscripted Series. And this week I'm going to talk about fretwork. Now, there's really at least two objectives when we think about what we're trying to accomplish with fretwork. The first is that I want to make sure that our action is as low as possible without any buzzing. And so for that to happen, the frets need to be leveled with each other. And then the second thing is I want them to feel good. So I want the ends to be dressed. I don't want you to feel any sharp ends. Now all of that sounds simple enough, but in fact it requires many, many steps. Now you've already been to the shop of Ben and Heather, and you've seen that Heather trims the fret ends on these frets. She trims the tang, but very importantly, that fret already has a 12-inch radius on it. So it's ready for Aaron and I to use when we press that into the fretboard. I'm going to just put this away. So we put the fretboard into this fixture, and it goes into the fret press. We press all the frets in. Now when we do that, it creates a little bit of an up bow, and we have to take that out. And we do that by putting the fretboard into this fixture overnight. You can see these dowels just lock that in place. This fixture has a nice curve to it, and it's going to gently take out that little bit of back bow, and it's going to put in a little bit of relief in the fretboard. So now that fretboard has a little bit of curve that way. This is the start of what becomes very important for, again, what I talked about, the level frets and the lack of buzzing. In the end, our fretboards, as you know, have a radius like this for playability, but we want a little bit of curve like that. That's called relief, and you want relief in these middle frets. Some people go for a dead flat fretboard, but with that, the action's going to have to be a little bit higher. With a little bit of relief, we can lower that action and still not get buzzing. It's a very important thing. Let me let in Roxy the shop dog, who just scratched here. Here we go. Okay, now, if you'll follow me over this way, the next step in the fret process actually occurs over here when we're shaping the neck. Let me grab a shaped one, or one that we're going to shape today. So after we have shaped the neck, we come over here and we sand it. When we do that, I sand a 30-degree bevel, like that and like that. And what that's going to do is it's going to bring the fret ends in a little bit from the edge of that fretboard, so when you run your hand down the edge of your neck, unless you press really hard, you shouldn't even feel where the fret ends are. They're going to be inset, just a hair. Okay, we take you over to this station. This is where we glue the fretboard onto the neck. And here we've got another fixture. This one's for a tenor. You can see this little bit of green material in here. This has been precisely made by Ben to have a little bit of a curve that way, and that's going to put our relief in the neck. We want about 5/1000ths of relief at the 5th fret, and so that has that relief built in. Of course, this is also curved this way, so this is a very simple looking block that is actually extremely complex to build. So that goes like that, and we have clamps that clamp that down, and that is what builds the relief into our fretboard. Then the next thing we'll do after we shape the neck is we do our fretwork. Now Aaron's already done a shop minute on this, but here is our Delrin block with a file mounted in it and that same 30-degree angle, and that is for shaping the edges of the frets. And then we have our little, what's called a safe file, where we can put our triangle on the end of each fret, and then with our little fingernail file, we can come in and smooth all of the frets. So that's what we do at this station. You'd think it's all done, but it's not. We have one last very critical step, and it occurs the day that we string the instrument. So I'm going to go over here to the stringing bench and show you how we do the final fretwork on the instrument. Let me move my tools here and bring down this instrument that I'm going to string today. So we've pressed all the frets in. I didn't show you this over at the fret press, but we have a little device called a fret rocker, and after we press all the frets in, when we first do that, we go carefully down the entire fretboard and across every fret, and this, using this precise straight edge, we try to rock it to see if any of the frets aren't level at that point. We want to get them as level as possible when we put them into the fretboard. But now we've glued, we've shaped, we've sanded, and so things might move just a hair, and we need to do our final bit of fretwork. So what we're doing there is just leveling all the frets, and what we'll do is go through and check it again with the fret rocker, and then we will take one of our files. Here's a little 6-inch file. Here's a 3-inch file for smaller work, and we'll run that file gently down the fretboard, which will sit on the high frets, and we file just a little bit, and I'm talking about the thickness of a piece of paper or less, and let the weight of the file do the work. We take a little bit off of each of the high frets until we can see marks on every fret where that file is touching. To maintain that relief, again, remember, we've got about 5 thousandths of relief here. We use this shorter file because we don't want to span that relief and file it away. So now we've got some file marks on our frets, and we have to do our final fret dressing. So I've got this fret file. You can see its curve in there, and we use that to smooth the top of the fret, running it like that. That's made for guitars. It's wonderfully smooth, but it's a little bit large in its radius. So I've got this one made for this fret wire, mandolin and ukulele, and I'll run that one over just to give the top of the fret a little bit more crown or rounding. So now we've got the frets shaped the way we want them. Last step is to smooth them out. We've got this very expensive but wonderful stuff we get from Stuart McDonald called micro mesh, and we'll start, and you've got to ignore the grits because they don't really correspond very well to sandpaper. These are very, very fine grits, and so we start at 1500 and run that up and down the fretboard, and it's really wonderful because your fingers combined with the micro mesh and the frets give it just the rounding that you want. And so this smooths over, and we'll go right up the grits all the way to 6000 on the micro mesh, and the last thing we do is take some single-aught steel wool. We steel wool up and down the fretboard, and that will just smooth everything out, get all the marks out of the fretboard, and you're left with something that feels perfect. The frets are level. We should be able to get very low action for the ultimate in playability. So it's a big part of what we do, and as you can see, it spans many, many steps of our process. Thanks, and I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.